Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. This is going to be part number, where are we at? 67 on the build tutorial series. And to tell you the truth, we're almost up to the end of it here. I have went ahead and done a few things off camera on the little build, but nothing major. I'll explain what I've done. And it's just one of those things, if you're building along or even thinking about building a model for the new guys out there, it's a matter of just gluing parts. That's all there is to it. So as you can see, we have the lower chassis sitting here, or the lower body and the chassis. They are now glued together. They are one. And all I did for that was basically go in back here at the attachment points at the rear, the attachment points at the front, put down a drop of glue on all four of those spots, set the chassis into place, and that's all there was to that part. Also went in and did a little bit more work on the simulated undercoating that's under the actual body, and I think that makes a nice contrast with the racing white chassis. So we did that part, and we rechecked all the wheels and everything, made sure they were going straight ahead. Everything looked good there. So after we glued the lower body down, I went ahead and put this mirror back on. That, if you remember back in another episode, I ended up taking that off because I touched it and it came loose. So I just took it off, set it to the side for a little bit till I got up to a point where I knew I wouldn't touch it anymore. So I just went ahead and glued that back on. As you can see, we do have the front bumper on. I have not done the touch up across the top of it for the chrome yet. Basically, it's going to be the same technique we used here on the top of the grill with the Molotov chrome, the liquid chrome. Just going in and doing the dot pattern on it and let it dry real good. So that came out nice. The other thing that I did get done was when we left off, the last video, I think, was on the running board. We went ahead and got the other running board done, so both of them are finished up. And see if we can get a shot of those, what they look like. That's how the running boards come out. Now this up in here, don't worry about this because this overspray here doesn't get seen when you put the body on. So you'll see some, looks like jagged edges and stuff like that, but that's not something that's visible when the body goes on. So we have that, and we finished up the other side running board. And as I was explaining on the when we were shooting that part, I didn't bring the running board all the way forward. I cut it off a little bit right there before the edge of the wheel well, and did the same thing back here in the back. It added a little bit of interest, and rather than running the running board all the way, front to back, it kind of gave that little bit of interest, made the car flow a little bit better. I think so anyway. So we got that done. All the interior is finished up for what we're going to do in it. We didn't do anything spectacular or special. Like I say, this model is still box stock, pretty much 100% box stock. We did do all the wood graining and the bare metal foil in the back. That was done on video. The engine's installed and finished. Everything's done in there, just the way that it was. So the other thing that we got done is I went ahead and put the rear bumper on, and I also put the rear tag mount on. And on that, I actually thinned that down a little bit. That is still the kit chrome that you see on the outside there. I went in and laid that on a sanding stick and just moved it back and forth and thinned it down. I took about 30 thousandths of an inch off of it. That thing was way too thick. So I went ahead and thinned that out a little bit. So we got that on there. We still need to put the license plate decal on it. And I picked out the yellow one. I think it's New Mexico. So we're going to put that one on. But as of right now, we are ready to set the body into place and glue it down. What you would do on this particular model, and I'm going to explain, what a beginner out there would do most times, but I'm going to also explain what I'm going to do on this model and the reasons why. The way that this upper body mounts down on this particular model to the lower fenders, after we did all those spacers and stuff on the rear fenders to make everything nice and tight, and we added the little bit extra to the body in these points right here, this body fits so well that as long as it's sitting in this position on the table, the body is not going to come off. It's not even going to move front to back or anything like that. So what you would do is come in on this particular model and you'd run a bead of glue right across the back bottom edge of it here. And you could put a little bit right here on the edges on this arc on the fender well if you wanted to, and just a little bit right here where it meets the front fenders. And another thing, before we go too far with gluing the body on, I did get the underneath brushed with the Vallejo paint. Nothing special in there, just basically painted it with the a little bit of a custom mix of Vallejo paint straight out of the bottles. Just kind of put a little bit of one color in, a little bit of another color, mixed them up with the brush, and we painted all that. Very simple, straightforward, nothing to it, and got that wrapped up. So the body's ready to go on. So yeah, you would put a little bit of glue back here, maybe a little bit along these fender well arcs here, and a little bit right here in the front, and you would just take the body and very carefully slide it over the lower body and push it all the way down, seat it into place where it goes. And like I say, everything on this little body fit perfectly after we did the spacing and all that, even at the firewall. And at that point right there, you can see I'm holding the model by the body and there's no glue on it. Now, I would recommend that you do glue it. In the case of this model, there's a reason why I will not glue that if it fits that well. If something would happen on the interior or at a later date, I notice, say I take it to a show and a judge picks out something on the inside of that model that, you know, kind of cost me points or, you know, was something that they didn't like, I have the option after that show to come back home and take this body and pick it up off of there, and I can get back to the interior and fix that little area that they noticed or that they picked on or they didn't like. If this was glued down, you wouldn't be able to do that. If it's glued on, that's a done deal. But you can't do that with all bodies. There is some bodies out there that you can. You just have to, you know, kind of as you're fitting parts and putting stuff together, you have to figure out if you have one of those. And if you're going into competition, it would be a good idea if you have a body that fits well to not glue it. If you are not going to do competition, it doesn't matter. So you can go ahead and glue it on. So that's why we're not going to glue the body down. That leaves a little bit of insurance later on that I can get to the interior if need be. So we have that. And of course, we've already pre-fitted the hood and all that stuff with the grill. Everything looks good there. Everything lines up real nice. So as far as the model being almost complete, we're almost there. Another thing that came up was somebody had asked me, and I forget who it was now, about using gloves and getting fingerprints and stuff like that on the model. I'm not a big glove fan. Normally when I build my models, just like this one here, even though it's polished out and we have it waxed and all that, yeah, it's going to get fingerprints on it. But I go around and I do what I call a final detail on a model when everything is assembled, ready to go. And like in this case, I've got it sitting on one of my bases that gets a clear acrylic top. I think they're from Testers or, I don't know, Lindbergh or somebody like that. But I've got it sitting on here. And when I'm done with the model, when I've got everything glued on it and it's ready to go and everything underneath is the way that I want it, I'll go ahead and put a drop of crystal clear on the bottom of the tires. And I will set this model down on the display board just like that. And I'll center it on the display, front and back and side, you know, side to side. Get that set. When that's set, I'll let it sit there for a while, let the crystal clear dry up. And then if I wanted to, I could pick the model up by the running boards and this lower base would come with it. And then I do what I call a final detail. And that's go in and check out anything that's left on the model, little odds and ends, a little flaw here or there, a little touch up. Sometimes I've had to pop parts back off because I got something just a little bit crooked and I don't like it the way it's sitting on the display board. So that's my final detail stuff that I go around and do on the model at that point. And then once I do that, I do a final polish of number 1 Novus, or if I have to, I'll go back and re-wax it again. and then go back in, clean all the panel lines out and all that stuff. But most of the time, it's just a number one Novus wipe down on it, wipe everything down. Sometimes I'll take a Q-tip, get into, the real tight areas, and that way I get all the fingerprints off of it. After that, I don't normally touch the model, because that's another thing about gluing them to a board. Once they are glued to a board like this, you can pick the board up, and you do not have to touch that model, unless something, happened to come loose or whatever. Now, doing that, you can't, on this particular board, you can't display the chassis. So, if you want to show your friends or whatever, hey, this is what I've done underneath of it, you can't pick it up off the board and show them. If you put it on a mirrored plate like this, which they do make, you can glue it down and you don't have an issue with that. They can look right at the bottom here and they can see underneath the model. So as far as using gloves on a model and keeping your fingerprints off of it, I mean, if that's something that you want to do, that's fine, because we do have oils on our fingers and things like that. So, by all means, if you're that, particular and not worried about getting fingerprints on the model and them affecting the model in any way, then by all means, definitely use the latex gloves or whatever. I don't use gloves a whole lot. Every now and then I'll put one on for some reason or another in the shop, but it's not something I do all the time. But like I say, we'll go back in and we'll do a final wipe down over this. And then what else do we have? I'm trying to wrap all this up and make sure we got all the information out there for everybody. I will have another questions and answers coming up to wrap up the final questions that came in here recently. So that'll be coming up. But I think in the next episode, we're going to go ahead. We'll put the decal on the rear, which is going to be hard to see because, and I may not even do that to tell you the truth. It's a matter of putting a decal on. Same technique we use on the decals that's on the side of it. Those decals right there, the mural decals, and nothing different. It's just going to be putting a tag decal on, because the way that I have the camera set, it's going to be real hard for you guys to see me putting a decal on the back of the car. You're probably not going to see much of anything. So we may not do that on video. I do have a little bit of cleanup to do around the headlights on the black panel line accent color that we put on. I've cleaned up the right side. I still have a little bit of bleed out around the left side one. That is an easy trick to clean up. And I guess while we're here on this part, let me go ahead and get the stuff that we need to do that. And I'll show you real quick on how to clean that up. Pop the hood off here, and we are going to use a microfiber towel in this case. But what we're going to do is we're going to flip that microfiber towel over. This is the microfiber part that you would actually use. We're going to flip it to the other side, and I'm going to shake my polish up here. Now, what this polish is, this is something I learned. This is the Meguiar's polishing compound, that if you go back to the wet sanding and buffing videos, you'll see when we use this. This is the Meguiar's polishing compound, and I have found out that it works very well for getting the Tamiya accent color back off of the surface. And another thing is, with the accent color, you have to remember, as long as you're working with a glossy surface like we have here, of course, we have clear coats down here before we put any of that on, it will come back off very easily. If you have a satin finish or a flat finish, it's not going to come back off, because it's down into the pores, the roughness of that paint, and it kind of bleeds. It's like if you went in on the interior and sprayed it flat and tried to use the panel line wash on it, it's going to bleed out all over the place and you won't be able to get it off. So the only way that you could really use it a lot on the interior is you would have to go in, paint the interior with your whatever paint color you're using, and then gloss coat it, do your panel line wash on everything, clean it up, and then go back in and flat coat it. So, but on the exterior of the car, we're nice and polished. We don't have an issue with it. So what we're going to do is take a little bit of the polish, and hopefully we'll get it out of the bottle here without making a mess. Okay, there we go. We're going to put a little bit of polish down on the cloth. Not a lot. You can see that little bit right there. Now, what you want to do in this case is take that polish, and what you're trying to do is take the polish and get it into the fibers of the cloth so that it's not basically you're not going to see it. So that's what it looks like when we kind of just wick it into the fibers of the cloth. And then on that part that we wanted to clean up, see if I can do all this and get it in the camera here. That's always the fun thing, is trying to get everything in the camera and show everybody what I'm doing. You can go in with that cloth right around this headlight area here. And what we're going to do is very lightly wipe that. And I probably should have done this before I put the bumper on. But we're just going to wipe that very lightly with that polishing compound. And you can see we just brought a little bit off of there. That's on the surface right now. Now we're going to take a Q-tip, now that we've got a little bit of that down on the surface. And we're just going to come in with the Q-tip. And we're not going to try to scrub or do anything, crazy with this. We're just going in and just very lightly wiping it around and getting the excess polish off of the areas that we do not want it. Okay, so now we're to that point right there. We got all the excess off, and that was with the polish. And the reason why I went ahead and cleaned that out on the cloth is because if you take the polish and you put it on the cloth and just wipe it directly on the model, then you're going to have to go back in and get that polish out of the recesses where we wanted the black line to be. So that's why we didn't do that. We went ahead and kind of made it wick into the fibers of the cloth. Now we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of the, get the right end here, Novus number 1. Going to put a little bit on our Q-tip. Now this is the actual Novus number 1. This is what we use for a pretty much a final polish on the car. Same product. And we're going to go in and just do the final little cleanup with that. And you can do this anywhere. You can do this around, your grill area. Anything that you've put this panel line wash on, you can do this. Okay, we have that cleaned up now. Now we're going to go to the side of our cloth that's made for polishing, which is that side. And we're just going to go in. We're going to very lightly wipe the Novus polish off. We're going to buff it around a little bit. Get all that cleaned off. And there you go. We are done. We got a nice black shadow line around the headlight. Everything, all the excess is cleaned up. The rest of it's off the lens. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, I think if you don't have a lot down on the surface, you could go in with just the regular number 1 Novus polish and get that off. But like I say, what's going to happen is you're going to be wanting to pull a lot of it out of the actually the panel line or whatever you're trying to do the wash on. If you get this too wet and it squeezes out, it's going to try to pull a lot of that out of there. But if you want to pull some of it out of there, then that would be a good way to do it. So either one, you can use the polish on it if you want to, or you can go back in and be very careful and use the Novus number 1 on it. So that just gives you an idea of what I done there. That's the steps that I did. You can experiment with it and see which one works best for you. And I guess while we're at it, we have this piece of cloth here that we can do a little bit of polishing on the roof here real quick. And this is just to show you what I would do after we get everything assembled. I'm going to take this cloth and we're going to put a little bit of the Novus number 1 on it. And then we're going to come up on top of the car. Actually, you would do the whole car like this. And another reason why I do this at the very end is because, remember I said we put the crystal clear underneath of the tires? Well, that's going to hold the model down so it doesn't move around. Like right now, it's moving around on me. It wants to scoot. But we're going to go in and we're just going to lightly rub our number 1 around. And another thing is, at this point in time right here, if you notice you have any little problem areas or whatever in your finish, you can go back to the polish if you need to. You could even go back to a compound step at this point in time. So you're not just dictated by going in and doing just the Novus number 1. If you see a flaw or whatever that you don't like and the number 1 won't take it out, you can go backward in your steps. But if you need to, you go back to the polishing stage and then bring it all back up again. And you would also have to do the wax process too. But we're just taking the microfiber towel and wiping it down now. And there we go. That's cleaned off. Looks pretty good. You'll just have to, judge it for yourself when you get to that point. See what looks good to you and go with it. So I think as far as this session, we are just about done. I am going to go in and, like I say, put the tag on back here. And what else do we have? We're going to touch up the front bumper. We will do that on camera. I'll go ahead and put the tag on, get that done. Then I'll come back and we'll do the little tutorial on how I touch up across the front bumper. Let's see, what else do we have here real quick before we go? The exhaust. There we go. I forgot all about that. We have the exhaust here. Now, in this case, this is the exhaust that I sprayed with the AK Extreme Metal Finish. This is actually polished aluminum color. This model is, a lot of people want me to do the heat staining technique. Unfortunately, on this model, another thing is you're not going to see this model underneath, so it probably wouldn't matter. But this particular exhaust would not show up a lot of bluing or anything like that, because once you get past the header, a lot of your heat in the exhaust, as far as what makes it turn blue, especially stainless steel, if that's what you're simulating, is gone. The header holds most of the heat, and the exhaust is really not going to show up a whole lot of heat staining. Now, if you have a motorcycle exhaust or, of course, a header or something like that, it will show it. So I think on this particular build, since this is all we have to put on yet, I got to paint the other one, or actually clean the other muffler and pipes up and get that painted. I'm going to go ahead and install this. We're not going to do the bluing technique on this exhaust, but I will put that on a future tutorial for you guys that want to see it. And we will try to do it on something that's a little bit more visible than this, a little bit bigger around and has more curves in it, so I can show you how I go in and put different colors on the curves and how different colors trail off of other ones and things like that. So we'll do a separate tutorial on the heat staining for all you guys that wanted to see it, but we're just not going to do it on this one. And then the other thing I have to do is just go in. I'm going to drill out these little exhaust tips right here, and we're going to paint them black inside. Nothing special. We're just going to drill down about maybe 1/8 of an inch or so just to hollow them out. And when we get the exhaust painted, we'll hang them on the end, and that'll be done. So that's all we've got for this video. Stay tuned for the next one coming up, where we come back in and do a couple little odds and ends, and then we will do a final video on what the model looks like after we've got all the little stuff done to it. I'll change the camera view so you can get a 360 view of it. I'll put it on the Tamiya turntable. So that'll be coming up. But for this one, that's all we got. Like always, if you got any questions or concerns, leave me a comment on the video, and we'll try to help you out with those. And again, I want to thank everybody for watching and all the support of the channel, and especially with this video series. And we are thinking about doing the next series that we talked about on video. So we might have a teaser video coming up for that real soon. So stay tuned. So that's all we got. As always, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.